Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, November 18th edition, following Northwestern's 23-15 win over Purdue at Ryan Field, the last game to be played at Ryan Field, I guess, as we understand it. Purdue had a lot of opportunities today. We'll talk about that. Didn't execute at the right time. That's part of the story. We'll hear from Tom Dienhart and Mike Carmin. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel and all that they do for us. We appreciate them. The 811 Bistro, the Boiler Up Bar, Leaps Coffee, all those things. Any one of those drinks might come in handy. Maybe coffee. I don't know. After this one, Mr. Dienhart's a coffee guy, and he's got some going there up at the Ryan Field press box. All right, and we also a reminder to folks too. First, that you can subscribe to us at goldenblack.com and read all of Mike and Tom's work. We appreciate that. And those message boards are always such a fun time this time of year after a game like that. Mike Carmin rolling his eyes up there, but that's okay. All right, Tom, I want to start with you as I usually do in these deals because you are the man on the street or in the press box.
The press box.
Disappointing loss. To me, this was a game that Purdue should have been ahead 17-6 at the half. Wasn't. It was scoreless at the half. It just seemed like a lot of missed opportunities. Yes, Northwestern certainly capitalized on its opportunities, made the big plays, but Purdue without its quarterbacks, there are a number of storylines. But how did Ryan Walters sum it up, and how do you sum this one up?
Yeah, we talked before we started about Ryan's comments, just in the post game, and you had him on the radio show. He was brief. I could sense some frustration here.
Very frustrated. Yeah.
So, it's been a long year for I'm sure that staff and a lot of those players. And you guys watched the game, just disappointed. This game was begging to be won by Purdue. And my God, how valuable is Hudson Card to this team, right? I mean, last week against essentially the same type of team in Minnesota, they scored 49 points. This week they're shut out at halftime, 6-0, and they struggle to score 15 points. And on it goes. Of course, the big storyline being Hudson Card's absence. And the decision to rotate quarterbacks. We asked Ryan about that in the post game. He just felt each of them sort of brought something different that could help the offense out today. They were hoping, guys, that one would get the hot hand and he would be the guy for the duration of the game. That never happened. But it was interesting. Ryan Brown came in for the last two drives. They sent him back out there for that potentially game-winning drive. So I thought even at halftime, he was my choice.
Yeah,
I think I sent something out on social media. He just had a little bit more to him as a runner, a little bit more explosion, I think. Neither guy looked like much of a passer today, but I just thought he did a little bit more. He was the guy that engineered both touchdown drives today. So, again, the offensive line had its issues once again. They still ran for 300 yards, but they were compromised up front. It sounded like Musa wasn't even supposed to play.
He did.
Right. He dressed, but he was supposed to be used on an emergency basis only, but he volunteered himself and played, and they needed him today. Ben Farrell suited up, tried to play, wasn't able to go, and we saw Daniel Johnson get out there and play. So, again, they're doing the best they can up front. But, guys, again, just disappointing to lose a game that was very winnable. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times this year, a game that was very winnable that Purdue was unable to come away with. And just lastly, too, guys, the turnovers and mistakes. A muffed punt. There was a mishandled kickoff down there by Tyrone Tracy. 2 interceptions, 4 fumbles, 2 lost fumbles. Northwestern, by and large, played a pretty clean game until that late interception.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah.
On that. I mean, it was very much the way. I'll raise my hand as a Saturday evening, not a Monday morning quarterback. Boy, I thought, and it's easy for me to say that Ryan Brown was a clear choice, even in the second half. I was glad they went to him at the very end, but I would like to have seen him earlier. Again, easy thing for me to say. Mike, what were your impressions?
Well, there's a lot to unpack from this game. And, initially you don't want to be overly critical based on the situation that they were faced with, but the same problem, and it doesn't really matter who your quarterback is to some degree, but the same problem that has haunted this team all year was short yardage situations.
Oh, yeah.
And they have not figured that part out yet. And
yeah.
I like when they were down there. I liked the jet sweep to Deion Burke. it didn't work, but I liked the different play call and what they ran on what they ran on the 2-point conversion. Where was that earlier in the year in short yardage situations? So, that was a big time fail again for this offense. Mm-hmm. And if Ryan wanted to go with the hot hand, you needed to have them throw the ball a little bit more to see who had the hot hand. And they really didn't do that. I mean, Brown had the hot legs, but maybe, he wasn't able to get in the rhythm throwing. And they had a lot of success on the ground, and they should have stayed with that, and they did. And they had an opportunity to get out in front of this game and maybe dictate things, but it didn't happen. But they were faced with a tough situation, trying to play two quarterbacks. I wish they would have settled on one after the first half. Yeah. Instead of alternating series, give one a quarter, the other one the other quarter, and then go with who you wanted after halftime. Let that guy get in a rhythm and let the offense understand who's running the show back there. But for the most part, I thought the defense played well enough to win. They gave up some big plays late, but they kept Purdue in the game as long as it could. And the Cam Johnson long touchdown run, I believe, is the same play that Iowa ran against Purdue.
Yeah,
it scored its touchdown early in the game, where they brought the guy in motion, and then they ran right behind him to a gaping hole. And I think the same thing happened again in this game. So, teams have figured out what Purdue's doing on defense in certain situations, and they're taking advantage of it. But, Tom's right. The turnovers were big. You can't muff a punt. Doesn't matter who your quarterback is in that situation. Mm-hmm. And some of the other miscues really put Purdue behind the 8 ball. But again, I think its defense played well enough to keep it in the game as long as it could. But you were going to have some problems on offense today based on your quarterback situation.
Yeah, four turnovers to 1. You just don't win many games when that happens. I think that's what the final total was, and that makes it nearly impossible to get the job done if you're Purdue in this situation, and that part is very, very disappointing from a Purdue standpoint. Okay, you look at rushing today, and again, Mike, you asked before this that the last time Purdue had 2 300+ yard rushing performances in a Big Ten game or any game. And I did look it up on the Tiller composite. They did come close in 2002. They did not do it. They had 295 yards against Indiana and 300 and some against Michigan State. My point is, I think you got to go back to the days of Mike Allstott, and maybe since that's Purdue's ground game got the job done against again today, and Tyrone Tracy and Devin Mockabee. Tracy certainly was big. But again, it's that 1 yard thing that just absolutely is a bugaboo of this football team.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to Jeff Brom era. I mean, obviously, even Joe Tiller, right? It's a symptom of Purdue, I guess, and the inability maybe to get those big physical offensive linemen. Just exasperating. And then the decision to eschew the field goals. I kind of wonder what your guys' thoughts are on those. Of course, missing the opening 44-yard field goal, deflating. I know that's not an easy kick, but still deflating. But they could have attempted a couple of field goals that were much more makeable, but they decided to go for it a couple of times and came up empty. Points are going to be precious in a game like this, and we asked Ryan that, and I think he didn't think Field was going to win this game. So that was an interesting choice. Right. And but then back to the backs, Tyrone Tracy and Devin Mockabee. Yeah, my gosh. Just the guys that have really been the bellwethers all year on this offense. The big plays today, the big run by Tracy, Mockabee catching the ball, and he had a neat run down that one sideline toward that south end zone where I think he leaped over a guy. And they keep the chains moving. And again, I've been having so valuable all year. Tracy went down late. That's something to keep an eye out for, his back. And so they're going to need him next week, guys. But again, you think of woulda, shoulda, coulda, and despite all those foibles, the turnovers, the muff punts, Purdue still was in a position to drive down the field,
Yeah.
4 touchdown, go for 2 and tie the game. So, yeah, having said all that, all those negative things, they still were in a position to maybe make this a ball game and win in overtime, and that just makes it all the more exasperating when you think about that.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy, the Northwestern fans thinking he was faking that injury. That 10 seconds did not help Purdue down the stretch, and they were already in a harried situation anyway, where I just didn't think they were really under control of what they wanted to get done. Not surprising when you have a true freshman quarterback in there, but that was not enough. It would have been a minor miracle for them to score and get the job done. But again, Ryan Walters talked about, at least on postgame radio, just about the whole notion of we've got to fix these little things and the attention to detail, and even the unsportsmanlike penalty. I know you had a pick on the next play, but that's the kind of stuff that just can't happen when you don't have a margin for victory, or margin for error, I should say. Purdue certainly didn't have enough of that today. All right, we'll look ahead to Indiana, and obviously now 2 3-8 teams playing against one another. We've seen that story before in the bucket game. That has happened. I'll have to look that up. I think it's happened a couple times where teams have had that record or worse heading into that game. But it is a game, Mike, that's going to mean a lot to Purdue. I know you're not a big believer in momentum, and I respect that. You're wise in saying that, but it's to sure would at least help yourself if you're Ryan Walters to get off the field, get off the season with a win against your rival. Did I put words into your mouth? I didn't mean to.
No, how would you view the season if Purdue beats Indiana? What level of success do you put on the season if Purdue beats Indiana? That's a question that I think the outsiders will look at.
Yeah.
But back to what you said about fixing some of these problems that have had, that to me, that's what these last 3 games have been about. Clean up the mistakes that you made to put yourself in a position to render these games not as meaningful as they should have been. And with whether it's the fumbles, the penalties, and other things, clean up those things at the end of this year so you can kind of push that into next year, and that should not be a problem. You should not have those issues going into next year. So it's a little disturbing to see some of that still happening at the end of the year. But, the Indiana game now becomes each team's Super Bowl, college football playoff, whatever you want to term it. But to me, that's the underlying question, how you view the season now. If they beat Indiana, is there some level of success there that you put on it? And the winner will put that on it because they can and they will, and that's what they'll promote as they go off in the off season and recruiting. But to me, it's a little bit of an interesting sidebar to this game coming up. It's a big game for both teams. Obviously, it's a big game for both schools. Everybody wants to win it. This is Walter's first bucket game, and just curious how he approaches it. But yeah, it's there'll be a level of interest in next week's game. I'm not going to say how much. There's a level of interest, though.
Well, considering it's going head-to-head in a television with Ohio State, Michigan, that's interesting. But, yeah, there is a level of interest from a Purdue standpoint, certainly. I do think Ryan Walters has to use every opportunity to show some level of progress. You're right. When you look at the grand work and say 4-8, are you happy? No, that was probably the low end of my expectations, of acceptable expectations. But I guess you could say if you win that game, you win 2 out of your last 3 and you look good doing that. Okay. And he just needs to he's not I don't think he's in danger of losing the locker room, so to speak, but he's got to keep the fan base excited enough. And he has to show, if Hudson Card comes back next week, has a big day, and Purdue stomps Indiana, then you might say, well, they could have beaten Northwestern with Hudson Card. I don't know. I don't know what fans think. But, Tom, I'll give you the last chance to sum that and bring this to fruition.
Oh, I've been part of many meaningless bucket games.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of 3-8 football teams. But, yeah, I think it's important for both these coaches, right? I mean, I think you talked about it a little bit, Alan and Mike, for Ryan Walters wanting – you always want to beat your rival. That's going to make your alumni happy to beat the Hoosiers. And then for Tom Allen, right, another tough loss today. I saw at home to Michigan State. I think he's safe probably for this year after they beat Wisconsin and gave Penn State game, and looks like they run the game today against the Spartans. But he's looking to enhance his approval rating, if you will, in Bloomington, Indiana. So yeah, big game for both those head coaches for different reasons, I guess. And yeah, I guess Mike makes a good point about off-season momentum. I think it probably is something that's media made or something
fan-made.
Come up. Yeah, fan made. But still, boy, if you're Ryan Walters, you want to be able to keep that bucket in the Kozich football complex. And as you know, Alan, some of these coaches have been fired because they couldn't beat their rival, right? Yeah. So again, it's always good if you're struggling, but if you can still beat your rival, that's going to curry some favor with that fan base always.
Yeah, I think one thing, and lastly, I'll say is that you want to show momentum. I understand the limited, but still, one of your biggest dates is on the calendar is signing day here in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and whenever that is. You want to do whatever you can to keep that class as intact as possible in this wonderful world of transfer portal and NIL. And I do think a victory and a little bit of that will at least help get that done. From that standpoint, we shall see. So no one's guaranteeing a bucket victory just yet, but it'll be interesting to see. I would suggest that I would expect Purdue, since Purdue was a favorite today before the Card situation and Scouton situation, I would expect Purdue to be a small favorite next week. Would you guys agree to that? Carm, you're a great bookie. Mike's
Mr. Vegas. What do you think?
Yeah, well, tell us what you think there. Are they going to be a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, a lot will depend on Card.
Yeah.
It may.
They may not put a line on it, right? Because of that.
It may open with no line, but I think once there's a line established, if Card's available and he's going to play, I think Purdue will be a favorite, not a big favorite, but still. If he's not, then you're probably looking at a pick'em. I would say, and that's what it's been the last 2 weeks anyway. When they put -1 to either team, it's basically a pick'em because there are no ties anymore in college football.
Yeah. As they say, a touchdown and a field goal, it'll be less than that. It'll be maybe a field goal that they'll be a favorite if Card's playing. All right, guys. Tom, have a safe trip back. Did you have another comment you wanted to make?
No, just scratching my ankle.
And safe travel back. You can have a tearful farewell of Ryan Field.
There it is.
And going back to the days of Dyke State.
Soaking it all in. I was thinking how many times I've been up here. I've seen Purdue a few. I saw Purdue lose here in 1988, win here in 91. I was with Mike in 2019 for the Aiden O'Connell game. And then today were the 4 times I think I've seen Purdue play up here. So my record is not too good up here watching the Boilermakers.
I remember I still owe them money because I think I walked in with the Purdue band. The last time Purdue had a shutout as a college student, I walked in with the Purdue band. It was raining cats or canned hams, as David Letterman would say. Purdue wins 35-0. That wasn't the last time I was there, but I remember also a Jim Everett game. I think I haven't been there for quite a while, but certainly farewell. But it sounds like the new place is going to be something else, and we're all going to. Yeah,
it'll be the same area. It's going to be the same stadium.
Yeah,
it's a cool. You guys, that's a cool neighborhood. Kind of reminds me of Hills and Dales a little bit.
Yeah,
the houses are right around here, and kind of tucked in the neighborhoods. It's always one of the more unique, and I think for me, kind of fun places always to come to.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Saturday night. Thank you to the Union Club Hotel. We will be doing this show again, probably around the same time as as this week, as Indiana and Purdue take each other. They've agreed to play one another, and they will next week on Saturday at noon. And we'll look forward to our next edition of Saturday Simulcast. Also, happy Thanksgiving to everybody else. And a reminder, you can subscribe to goldenblack.com. We highly recommend you do so. And stay tuned for Brian Newbert's coverage also from Hawaii, as Purdue's men's basketball will have a busy and important week out west. So have a great rest of the weekend, all. Thanks to all for watching, and we'll see you next week on Saturday Simulcast.